get started, we've got a few housekeeping items. Only the panelists are displayed and heard, but we do want to hear from you. So please ask your questions via the Q&A panel or button on your Zoom panel. If you put them in the chat, we won't see them. We will answer your questions towards the end of the presentation, but please, if you think of questions while we go along, put them into the Q&A button. And we will share both a recording of the session as well as the slides as soon as possible after today's webinar. My name is Raquel Cloyd. I'm the Business Development Manager here at Intellect. If you attended any of our webinars, you probably know my face by now, but today I have a co-host. We have launched a partnership with insurance company Assured Partners, who offers professional expertise on quality and operational efficiency to their clients in manufacturing and other spaces. I'd like to introduce Assured Partners Vice President Alush Garzan and invite him to say a few words about Assured Partners.
Thank you so much, Raquel. It is really an honor to be able to co-host this webinar with you guys. So Assured Partners is a top 10 national insurance broker. My name is Alush Garzan. I am the national practice, manufacturing practice leader for Assured Partners. And like I said, we are a top 10 insurance broker. We manage property and casualty, workers' compensation, and employee health and benefits with programs specifically designed for manufacturers that are, I would say, best in class or best in class. So once again, very excited to be a part of this, and we really appreciate the opportunity to co-host with you, Raquel. So thank you.
All right, thank you. And there's Alush's contact information if you'd like to learn more about Assured Partners and our partnership with them. In case you aren't familiar with Intellect, we are an award-winning quality and environmental health and safety software company built on a no-code platform and powered with a robust AI integration. We help companies across a variety of industries to automate their quality processes, reduce operational risk, and achieve their quality and compliance goals. Many of these goals include maintaining and achieving compliance with FDA, OSHA, ISO, GXP compliance, and more. Highly regulated industries, whether it be manufacturing in aerospace, med device, electronics, biotech, and others, need a highly tuned quality system to meet their needs and provide peace of mind when the auditor arrives. Intellect has you covered. We have over 30 quality and AHS applications ready to use out of the box, or you can configure and build out unlimited custom applications to meet any quality or business need. If you would like to see a demo of our software, you can visit us at intellect.com or simply type in the word demo into the Q&A button on your Zoom panel, and a team member of ours will reach out to you after today's webinar. All right, on to the presentation. I am excited to welcome back and introduce our speaker today, Kevin Posey. He is head of QA and RA for Genesis Spine and has held key elected positions within ASQ. He is founding member of its innovation division and has led and developed training courses for its membership. He holds an MBA and has 3 decades of experience in quality and regulatory, product development, and manufacturing in a variety of industries, including medical device, diagnostics, aerospace, mining, and industrial equipment, and he's co-authored 2 books on quality management. Kevin previously spoke for Intellect webinars on advanced audit interviewing techniques and also supplier risk, and we are excited to welcome him back to speak on today's topic.
Excellent.
Sorry, thanks, Kevin. Thanks for joining us again. Before I hand things over to you, I'd like to ask a poll question to everyone here. We want to know how you are currently tracking and calculating risk. We're going to launch the poll. If you please take a moment and let us know, maybe you're not formally quantifying risk at the moment and you're here just to get some ideas, or maybe you're using paper-based reports, checklists, clipboards, etc. Maybe you've got Excel or other spreadsheet software. Maybe you have an EQMS in place and that's how you're using to manage risk, or maybe something else. So please check all that apply. We'll wait for everyone to put in their answers. We've got about 60% participating. We'd love to hear from as many of you as possible. And we'll go ahead and share the poll results when we're done. All right, we're about 75%. Just get a few more people in there. We'd love to hear how you are currently tracking and calculating risk. All right, let's go ahead and share the results. So currently, I'd say probably the majority is using Excel. Some aren't calculating risk at all. So great that you can get here and learn ideas from Kevin. We've got mix of paper, some have an EQMS in place, and other systems are employed as well. So thank you everyone for participating in the poll. And I'm going to go ahead and hand things over to Kevin.
All right, thanks, Raquel. Appreciate that. Let's move forward. There we go. So here's the problem summary for today. What we're going to cover here in this webinar is talk about the pressure, and it couldn't be higher for quality and compliance teams, which is where I come from. We'll get into that a little bit. I come from the what I call the bottom level, really focusing on product and process risk, which we'll get into. So for quality and compliance teams, the pressure's getting high. In addition to our day-to-day responsibilities, we need to be able to proactively identify, assess, and mitigate risks. How you document that, like the last poll question, and how you manage it is definitely an opportunity for improvement. But the goal here is to ensure quality, profitability, reputation, and sustainable growth. Most of you would agree that quality is a big part of that. That's why it is in that kind of teal color. Where folks from my background come from, we don't typically look at the risk management to support profitability, reputation, and growth. But we're going to expand into that today. We're going to talk about how that. So the other concept is generally folks from quality and compliance tend to think bottoms up in terms of risk, where the business leaders tend to think top down. We'll get back to that. So yes, it's a busy and challenging environment, and risk management can also be easily siloed or deprioritized in the company. Maybe it's only assigned to quality or to a risk management portion of the company. And that's a problem. And that may not get corrected until it's too late. Coming from an ASQ background, we definitely feel like risk management should be treated as an ongoing, possibly even systemic or business-wide. So it's in red because that's not common necessarily from an ASQ approach. But it should be that kind of a process rather than a one-time activity. We won't talk about it so much today, but from an ISO 14971 medical device risk management perspective, risk management is a cycle. It is an ongoing life cycle approach. In terms of top level objectives today, we hope to help you at least get a start at how you can conduct a comprehensive risk assessment. Comprehensive being bottoms up and top down, really look at the big picture. Part of that would include strengthening and stabilizing our supply chains, which is a super critical point. We learned a lot of lessons during the COVID timeframe on that. Still a lot of opportunity to manage that risk. Or in my business, navigating FDA regulations and ISO standards, even in larger manufacturing, is still very, very important. Integrating that risk management into an overall QMS, both for efficiency as well as capturing the hidden risks, the siloed risks, bringing those out into the light, so to speak. And that might include cybersecurity threats, both as part of your product, which is a common thing within medical device right now, but it would also include your IT systems, your business continuum. So the threat of shutting down your manufacturing ERP system, for example. And finally, safeguarding intellectual property. So it's a lot to cover. It's a pretty ambitious set of objectives for this webinar, but let's get started. So let's go to the next slide. And first thing I have to ask is, did that even cover everything? Did it? I mean, there is a wealth of information, or a breadth of information both ways into all those areas. And one you could ask is, for me, coming from a quality and regulatory, even as at an executive level, is that something I need to worry about, particularly like financial risk? And I think that answer is yes. We'll get into that. Who should be concerned about supply chain risk, right? What about geopolitical risks, currency fluctuations, stock market fluctuations, stock price and market cap fluctuations? Kind of tied in, but also a little different. And I recommend that even in the larger companies, the more people that understand these risks and can participate in the management or even transfer of some of the risks there, the better the company does. Next slide here. So in terms of webinar, we're going overview, excuse me for that. We'll talk about these categories focused on manufacturing risk. So as a services or maybe a software supplier, software company, I think these things still apply, but it is kind of a manufacturing flavor today. So we're going to look at factors to consider and some of the tools that we can use or should use as part of that overall comprehensive risk assessment of the entire company, not just the product. So We will break this down into risk categories, starting with product, which usually also includes user risk. So what if the product fails, what happens to your patient? If the product fails, what happens to the company using your product? We'll also look at then, I see it as escalating levels or higher levels, process risk, the processes that actually result in product characteristics. Typically, you think about suppliers or manufacturing. Systemic risk, as we move to look at the entire system, end to end, the design process through product retirement, are there unique risks there? And then overall business risks that we've kind of alluded to so far. And this graphic really is a great way to kind of look at that. And particularly the higher you go up in the risk categories, and you'll see what I mean by that, things like control and transfer take on increasingly more importance, versus just reducing. From a product perspective, that's a common one, is we want to reduce risk to an acceptable level so that we can get FDA clearance for our product and we can sell it. We're going to look at a bigger picture now. And for each of those 4 categories, I propose some factors and tools that you can use as part of that overall approach to risk management. So we're going to ask one more quick poll question. At which of the following levels have you or do you assess and manage risk? So based on the ones we just identified, let's take a moment and let us know where you think your company is at right now. Give that a few more moments. Okay, so how do we do? So it looks like about 20% of us are not formally quantifying risk, and that's consistent with the first one, the first survey we did. Another 20% are looking at product user risk. 36% looking at process risk, which is good. We're getting to there. And then the last 24% look at include systemic and business risk. So that looks like a pretty significant opportunity for the company. All right. Thanks, Raquel. All right, so let's move on. Let's get into this now. There we go. So I kind of alluded to this. I look at these risk categories as an escalating pyramid. From a manufacturing perspective, we start at the base here, product and user risks. We cannot proceed without addressing that. And that, whether we're FDA, medical device, pharma, heavy industry, aerospace, defense, transport, you name it, there are product or user risks that we have to address. Those are non-negotiable. Where almost all of these are in some way ISO oriented, right? There's an ISO standard in terms of the quality management system that we either want to or are required to follow. So that gets us into the process risk areas. We have processes, they have risks, we need to manage them. That's part of, whether it's ISO 9001, ISO 13485 for med device, TS 16949 for transportation, etc. And then we move up into the higher level, the systemic risks, and then the business risks. And we'll break these down here in just one moment. So let's talk about the proposal here. So this concept, maybe it's not necessarily new. I kind of put it together, maybe out of the depths of my mind of being exposed to it elsewhere, not claiming it to be unique, but the concept here is, as we expand our risk management scope from that base up the pyramid, the scope and potential impact of these risks are increasing. So larger scope, therefore greater potential overall risk, particularly harm. So starting with specific products and users to overall business risks, kind of business ending risks, which we want to avoid. Let's get into each of these categories. So we start at the base here just to make sure we are clear. I think the definition is probably relatively clear, but the potential for losses or negative impacts are directly related to a specific product or service. If you are a company that's making life-saving products, or you make a product that regularly puts a significant number of people at risk at the same time, perhaps you're an aircraft manufacturer, the impact can still be pretty high, but it's limited. I mean, We don't want to talk too much about what's the impact of one plane crash, but that is worse than one patient dying, both bad situations. So impact level, take that, this low to moderate, not meaning that the individual impact is low to moderate, but overall to the company, it's low to moderate. When we get into the higher levels, you'll see where there's some crossover where a significant product risk actually can start to escalate into higher levels. Generally, primarily, we're talking about customer satisfaction, product performance, and experience, user experience. And a couple of examples: defects that lead to recalls, user interface issues that upset the customer, or security vulnerabilities in a software product that may or may not have higher level issues. Right? Let's look at process risk now. Here our definition is, now we're talking about risks associated with internal processes of an organization. Generally, a process, that's the next level. We'll look at interrelated processes, but where a failure of this can impact efficiency, effectiveness, and possibly compliance. So overall, the risk level I propose here to the business is a little bit higher, moderate to significant, because we're talking about operational efficiency. Profitability, right, is a key one there. Compliance, which is the potential risk for fines and other regulatory action, and potentially more significant negative customer outcomes. So a couple of examples here is inefficiencies in the supply chains, where you've got a multinational supply chain that's subject to significant disruption if a particular port is shut down for an extended period of time, or there is something like a worldwide pandemic that shuts down all the ports. What are you going to do? It could be financial issues here, because that is a process. Errors in financial reporting due to inadequate controls. That's going to have some escalating issues generally. And non-compliance with regulatory requirements that cause legal penalties. These are not specifically related to product risk, though. So it could be like filing of certain documentation on time. All right. Moving on to systemic risk. Guess what? We're talking about the system now. You knew it, you guessed it. So things that can affect the entire system or your market for your business, due to interdependencies and possibly cascading failures from the lower levels of product. Failure leads to a systemic failure that now is a systemic risk. I'm sorry, a process failure that leads to a systemic risk. These can be significant, up to high, and affects multiple parts of the organization. So we've got interrelated processes, potentially leading to widespread disruptions. So cyber attack is the perfect example of that, widespread disruptions. Some type of compromise that starts because of a customer-facing website that's not properly secured, that now gets into your QMS software, gets into your ERP software, assuming if they're not so protected. Most of them are, if not all of them. So, but that's a risk to consider, right? That's why we manage it. Financial crises that may actually start outside the company or inside the company, but they impact the broader economic environment, particularly if they start outside. And industry-wide regulatory changes that disrupt standard operating procedures. So you have to start doing things a different way. I've got experience with a couple of those that we could talk about offline, but they're not. That's not the point of today. Systemic risk, right? And finally, business risk, broadest category. And in some ways, it does roll up everything below it, so encompassing all potential threats to the overall viability and profitability of a business. So a single recall, even though it's product risk, can impact the profitability of the business, particularly if it ends up being a widespread and very expensive recall. The impact level, therefore, is high to severe. It can jeopardize the entire business unit, the local plant. Depends on the specifics, of course. Can also damage your reputation, financial health, and long-term sustainability. Can we say Boeing again? Unfortunately. Examples are major shifts in market demand leading to significant revenue loss. Yeah. Strategic missteps or poor business decisions resulting in significant competitive disadvantage. For those that come from an MBA background, we're thinking about some things like Porter's 5 forces or other things like that. Catastrophic events such as natural disasters, widespread pandemics, political instability, If you need to get something out of Southeastern Europe right now, could be a challenge with things going on in those areas. So now we've covered all 4 categories. Let's talk about some of the tools and factors. Would love to be able to get into more of this, but having only an hour, we're really kind of looking at top level overview as much as possible. This one we've already, I think, covered the factors to some extent. It's related to product quality and reliability for sure. User experience and satisfaction also. The security vulnerabilities in terms of cybersecurity, in other words, absolutely. And customer perception and happiness in terms of feedback and complaints, and how you do in the market. That's one that's not always looked at. That's a common one that's, in my opinion, maybe 50 to 75% of the companies out there don't look at how we're doing that. And why is that? Because we tend to be smaller companies. Big companies pay really close attention to things like market share and who's coming out with new products. As a small company, well, you want to get there. So think about that. This is in terms of tools, this is by no means an extensive list of all the tools. Some of these are software focused, taking a little nod to software products, software as a service, like what Intellect offers, or med device software. So there are tools like the general ones, FMEA, fault tree analysis with FTA, or automated testing tools that are super powerful QA tools, user feedback tools, particularly for the last 2 bullets on the factors, are pretty important in doing some investigation for this. I came up with some interesting ones that I wasn't familiar with. So some things worth looking at, like SurveyMonkey and Qualtrics. Bug tracking software, particularly for either our software is our product or software related to our process. It actually can be quite important. Some people think manufacturing software, we don't need to track those bugs. That's an open area of risk. If you have not or are not doing that, this is your opportunity. So some good tools like Jira, Bugzilla for software, or EQMS tools like one we've already mentioned to help manage those defects, track them, and trend them. From ISO 9001, ISO 1345, tracking and trending or monitoring performance of your processes is an important part of compliance. These tools can help with that. Of course, cybersecurity tools, NIST, as far as at least domestically within the US, has a great cybersecurity framework. There are others outside of the US, it's not the only one. And those have a number of tools related to them, like static and dynamic security testing. So that's those acronyms, SAST and DAST, if you will, and other tools that I've not used, but became a little bit familiar with, the OWASP, ZAP, and SonarQube. Not an extensive or exhaustive list. And then product analytics, particularly web-facing product analytics like Google Analytics or Mixpanel, to track user behavior and engagement on the web, because everything we do is on the web anymore. You're here on the web, right? So we're doing this on the web. We could run some Google Analytics on this webinar, I suppose. All right. Well, we will have time at the end for any questions, so definitely post up your questions, or you have them ready. We can come back to some of these as necessary. Next level, process risk. Many common tools here. The factors are, of course, process efficiency and effectiveness. For those who ever saw or sat through my audit training, that's an important one. That is a next level step. The baseline, similar pyramid concept, baseline for quality system auditing is starting with compliance and conformance, but you can't stop there. Next level, the way I train on it, is efficiency and effectiveness. We want to audit for efficiency and effectiveness, and the top level is actually performance metrics. Of course, our processes, where required, need to be compliant with regulations. We need control mechanisms to maintain compliance, as well as the business objectives of the efficiency and effectiveness. Maintaining operational workflows, so there generally are some metrics related to that, operational efficiency and effectiveness. Reducing or eliminating bottlenecks in our processes. And oftentimes these are also tied with employee performance and training. So, because our employees are an important part of the process. They are a key part of it, in fact. Some process tools, some of these may be new to you. They were new to me, again, in doing some of the background. Some I was very familiar with, but this was a broadening opportunity. So Business process model and notation is a new one to me, and other tools like Lucidchart. Visio is well known. It's great for doing a flow chart in different methods, different styles, whether you like a straight flow chart or you like to do a swim lane style flow chart. Those are very easy to do in Visio. You can do them in other tools like Excel. Workflow management is really important because once we define a perfect workflow, a future state workflow, particularly if you have some Six Sigma or some Lean background, you want to identify those and code them into your EQMS so that you electronically match your best process. And other tools like Trello, Asana, or Monday.com are also excellent as you maybe get down, even narrow it down to daily workflow management by employee. Because that's a common one. We want to manage a workflow at the top level, but also give the employees the tools to manage their workflow. Can you use Outlook tasks and things like that? Yes, but that's not the most efficient way to do it, at least not the most. Compliance management, there are a number of things. Of course, your EQMS is almost always keyed into that. It's an important cornerstone of compliance management. And there are others like Metric Stream or ComplySci that were new to me. I know a number of EQMS systems, and they're excellent. Regulatory intelligence tools, as far as being aware of what's going on in the market. It's a little more particular to med device, pharma, in vitro diagnostics, my background, but there are business intelligence tools that we could have added in here that would be similar as far as looking at the process risk. Internal audit's a key process, but there's a risk associated with that, but also a key tool for finding process risk, addressing it, and feeding into a risk management process to mitigate or eliminate that. Today's webinar is really about eliminating risk wherever we can. It's okay to mitigate it, to reduce it, but we want to eliminate it if we can. Design that risk out of our process. And to the employees, then there's also the performance management, particularly as we develop into a larger company or we're part of a larger company, having a solid HR process for performance management becomes super critical in terms of potentially then some higher level systemic or business risk related to mismanagement of the employees. Performance tools like Workday or Bamboo HR, a couple of good examples for that. Set clear expectations, follow up regularly with our employees, make sure that they've got the tools and resources to do it, and that the data backs that up. I just outlined a simple process for you right there. Next, let's make sure. Systemic risk, there we go. Factors we've talked, I think, about most of these already. Interdependencies, absolutely. That's the definition of a system, right? Interdependent system, subsystems. Regulatory changes can impact our system. Again, for my business, the application of MDR and IVDR regulations for Europe required some pretty significant systemic changes in med device, pharma, and in diagnostic companies. So that was a pretty significant regulatory change. And it's been ongoing. It's still not done. It's been going on for, gosh, the better part of 8+ years. Changing market dynamics and economics, business cycles come and go. They're up and down all the time. So can you assess what's the current risk based on either things going up or down, and both have their risk? So just because it's going up doesn't mean that you're without risk. Now you've got scalability risk. Market's booming, and we have the opportunity to double our sales next year. Do you have the staff? Do you have the processes? Have you addressed all your process risks and automated them as much as possible into an EQMS? So that's boiled up to a systemic risk. Disruptions in technology, right? I mean, they're the classic ones, the iPod, the iPhone. Not to give Apple all the credit, but there are some good ones out there. Those typically represent both risks as well as opportunities. Opportunity is a positive risk. And then particularly changing industry standards and practices. Tools, again, some of these are familiar, some are new. The COSO ERM, it was new to me. ISO 31000 is a relatively new ISO standard relative to assessing business risk in a more generic sense, rather than just being focused initially on product risk or user risk. which like ISO 14971 is a product risk level ISO standard. Scenario analysis and simulation tools is new to me. So coming again from bottom up, this is not something I typically get exposed to. So if you're in that zone, this is a good opportunity to ask about this. Maybe this is something you can get involved in. So software like At Risk or Crystal Ball for stress testing and scenario planning. I think that would be fascinating. For me, having been through an MBA, maybe that touches me a little bit more. But if you're interested or have ever thought about more of the business side, going over from me starting in quality engineering and being moving up into executive levels, it becomes more and more interesting. So other regulatory compliance, there are a couple of references here: Compliance 360, RSA Archer, to monitor and manage changes in regulatory compliance. And it could be the environmental side as well, which Intellect has great modules to address that. I'm not the only one out there in the market that does it, but it is a pretty robust example. The market analysis, as far as systemic, we're starting to cross over into tools related to business, but platforms like Bloomberg Terminal or Thomson Reuters Icon for economic and market data. You may need that for specific system level risks that are not necessarily business wide yet, but I think those are going to quickly turn into business, either opportunity risk or negative risks. And then of course the cybersecurity, you see it kind of flows throughout, because cybersecurity again tends to morph or flow between levels depending upon the scope of the impact. Integrated security solutions like Palo Alto Networks, Cisco, SecureX, you're talking enterprise-wide cybersecurity, your frontline defense, essentially to not just manage your cyber threats. Those are pretty extensive offerings that cover not only kind of basic firewall activities, but deeper things like phishing attempts, and we could go on and on. It's not my specialty. I have worked in it a little bit, but so some great tools. And there may be partners out there that are great opportunities to do this, whether it's an IT company or others. And finally, business risk in terms of these tools and factors. Of course, now we're getting into top level strategic decision making. You may not be at that level. I've been at that level for a while, but the key thing with strategic decision making is looking at the whole picture and coming with information as far as what are the trade-offs. Every strategy has a risk. Every risk has a strategy, or should have one, right? So knowing both market positioning and competition, where do you lie currently? What's the goal? What does senior leadership, executive leadership, where do they want the company to be? So there's a kind of a mission vision question. Do we want to be the choice of the market, the number one choice of the market in 5 years? And right now we're number 10. That means we're going to need to take some risks to do that. We're going to expand that rapidly. So there's the positive risks as well as mitigating the negative risks. Financial health and liquidity, absolutely important. Tends to be, come down from the CFO, but my recommendation here is that don't let it be siloed, because there are other impacts. There are other things that can impact that. Top-down management, leadership will help with that as far as flowing down that information. But reputation and brand value, every employee has an impact on. That's all. I could do a whole different webinar on that. And happy employees make for happy customers, as opposed to the other way around. Yes, we want our customers happy, but how do you approach that? If you make your employees angry to make the customers happy, that is a short-term solution that is not going to last right into the long-term sustainability. We want all our actions, our risk mitigations, our risk transfers, as much as possible to be long-term and sustainable. Then the list of tools, ClearPoint strategy, I'm not familiar with. OnPoint or OnStrategy, I hear they are excellent tools. If you get a chance to use them, or if you have used them, drop some comments, or we can come up in the questions. Financial risk management, of course, tends to be a little more siloed and controlled because those are sensitive numbers. But if you do have the opportunity to be involved with them, SAS Risk Management or Risk Watch. I think Assured Partners has some tools in that area as well. Reputation management systems, yeah, there actually are systems out there like Brand Watch or Mention. Absolutely. Take a look at those. Business Intel. We mentioned that in passing, at least at the last level. Systemic is, I had regulatory intelligence. Business Intel could be at the system level, but definitely at the business level. Tools like Tableau, Power BI is really more of a broad range of tools. The Business Intel board, or Click with the Q to analyze business performance and trends. Oftentimes these live in the sales organization or at the top levels, but we're talking big picture, and we want everyone here in this webinar to be familiar both with the bottoms up product to business as well as business to product risk management tools. And really kind of tying all that together, enterprise risk management is that final solution that potentially encompasses all the tools to some extent that we've just talked about. So integrated EQMS or ERM tools like Logic Manager, Resolver to manage overall business risks. Of course, our sponsor today, Intellect, has that level of tool as well as far as an integrated EQMS. What could be said here, actually, I did not include it specifically. When I say integrated, we're talking not just EQMS with other systems, but with your ERP. So you go from your quality management system to your execution system as well, that you have those integrated, which would also include our supplier management process, our sourcing process, even where we're direct sourcing versus outsourcing things to suppliers. So, a number of areas. All right. So are there benefits to this? Well, clearly, I made the slide, right? It's right here. Yeah, I think this, and I propose this as a holistic risk methodology. My summary, not saying it's absolutely unique, but these 4 points I think are absolutely guaranteed if we do this process, even a portion of it. The more we do it, the more we see the benefits. Better product quality, higher customer satisfaction by every measure, operational efficiency off the charts, systemic vulnerabilities identified, controlled, perhaps even eliminated. So, and a stronger strategic position and therefore financial stability of the whole company, right? That's again, that's the top level. You can almost think of those 1, 2, 3, 4, working our way up to the peak of the pyramid and the highest positive impact. Sounds awesome, right? What more could we need or ask for? Back to the original problem statement is the problem is this is not typically done. These 4 areas are typically done in siloed methods. And the goal here today is to get you thinking about how can we break down those silos and work these together. These all feed one another, or at least they feed up to the top level. You really can't do number 4 without having some level of attempt at 3, 2, and 1. So the quick summary here is by leveraging the listed factors and tools, not exactly a line by line or step by step outline of how you would do it, but hopefully you've got a picture now of some tools you could look at or at least emulate. A lot of these things can be done with basic tools like Excel or Word or PowerPoint upfront, and then as you get more advanced, you get more deeper into it to essentially graduate into the tools that you're going to have to pay for. But leveraging those within the risk categories, using the holistic approach, our businesses can effectively do these 3 things: identify, assess, and mitigate risks at each level, hopefully even eliminate them. That's our goal, eliminate, but we'll be satisfied with mitigating to an acceptable level. We'll also ensure a more resilient and robust risk management strategy that is integrated across all the areas, not siloed, and deliver the benefits we just talked about on the last slide, right? Bullets 1 through 4, or numbers 1 through 4. So really high, pie in the sky, some really optimistic goals there. I think they're quite realistic. And that's where we get to give ourselves a little fist bump here. It's an old meme, but I still love this one. Success Baby says, you guys have done it. You've got some takeaways now. We've got some good time here left at the end for questions. So I'll turn it back over to you, Raquel, and we'll take some questions.
All right, thank you so much, Kevin. Before we get to your questions, and now would be a good time to enter them into the Q&A button on your Zoom panel. We'll get to those in a moment. If you would like to get a hold of Kevin after this session, have questions for him, you can contact him at the email address presented on screen, or here is his LinkedIn URL as well. And again, we're going to share the slide deck, so you'll have access to the slide shortly. I also want to introduce the Intellect Road Trip webinar series that we're offering this summer. So we are launching a series of summer webinars on various quality-related topics. Register for any or all of these webinars, and you'll be entered to win a $100 Amazon gift card. The good news is if you're watching this now, you're already entered because you registered for this webinar, but you can visit us at intellect.com to register for the rest. And again, if you'd like to get a demo of our software, simply type in demo into the Q&A button on your Zoom panel, or visit us at intellect.com. All right, let's get to the questions. We've got a couple to kick us off. Kevin, how can quality and executive or financial teams begin to work together to mitigate risk holistically? Is there a tool or process that can help?
Yeah, where I see that starting is coming from the quality leadership perspective is actually like an annual management review, or if you do it more often, is a great time to start talking about that. To ask those, because typically you're going to have your senior executives present, and coming to them maybe based on this a presentation like this with a proposal for a more integrated approach to risk management to improve not only the quality and regulatory performance, but support business goals is important. And I meant to actually bring this up earlier, but it also ties in with the idea of like Kaplan Norton and a strategy map. Is if the senior executives have not done a tool like that or developed a strategy map for the company, is get trained up on it, learn about it, because that helps everyone visualize what supports both the current performance as well as is what's going to drive future performance. And risk is tied to both, right? There's positive risk and negative risk. So we want to manage the negatives and effectively manage the positives as well, because that's our growth, that's our future. So the annual management review is where I would start with that.
Okay.
So I actually have a question too, Kevin. And I loved how you talked about eliminating first, right? I love a big believer, eliminate risks first, mitigate second, and then transfer if you have to at the very end. But I would imagine once you implement a lot of these practices, that this is an ongoing process, right? This isn't something that you set it and forget it. So how would you recommend people, plan for the future as things adjust with their business, their risks changes as things adjust, as they offer new products? And I would imagine this has to be revisited from time to time. So how would you suggest they do that?
Yeah, great question. I absolutely agree. Maybe it'll sound a little bit like a broken record. Again, from my perspective, that starts at management review, because that is there's a set cadence, typically at least annually. More often, I do a monthly metrics review that feeds that. But part of that by requirement should include risk management. The interpretation currently, and includes my company now, is focused on product and maybe system risk, right? Audits, supplier audits, internal audits. That's an opportunity to take this big picture, some of the tools we talked about, and start to expand that out. So whether those attending are in a quality leadership role or looking to that in the future, or at least can start to grassroots influence quality managers that are responsible for those. Again, that's where I see it starting. That's my lever. Now, those of you in different industries may have different levers or different recommendations, which we'd love to hear about. But at least that's where I see it happening, because I've got all the right people together. It's a planned one. Conceptually, I have executive leadership captured for probably at least 2 hours, so I can talk to them. And I'm going to be speaking their language. Increasing business, better profitability. I would think they'd want to listen, right?
The top down, right? Top down, just about always, right?
Yeah, top down, but also talking to them bottoms up and meet in the middle in a nice, successful business party.
All right, thank you. Another question for you. I'm a quality auditor. How can I convince management to take this more holistic approach?
I love that because, basically you see from my background, I spent a lot of time in the auditing area. And in my opinion, internal auditors are potentially one of the most powerful tools for positive business change in any company. Where there is an internal audit function, you guys have the most power because you see more of how the business really operates than any CEO ever will. They know the top and down a few levels, but you see the whole base of it. So where you turn that into tools or impact is starting to think bigger picture of and looking for those interactions. One of the other webinars we did here with Intellect was about advanced auditing techniques and some things that some tools you can use, like gosh, I draw a blank on it now. But appreciative inquiry is a tool. Look it up. It's out there, where you actually ask about bigger picture things than just the compliance side of audit. So that's something that every auditor can do within reason. Every audit is add a bit more. Ask questions like, how could we have done this better? How, talking to the if you will, the lowest level technician, or maybe even, the person responsible for janitorial, from their perspective, how can we do this better? Or even better, asking them, what do you love about being here? What do we need to keep doing? And gathering that, you're not going to get, brand new business strategy from every single employee. But as an internal auditor, you start to aggregate, collect all this information. Again, that's that really unique perspective you're going to have on the company, feeding that into your internal audit program. Hopefully, it helps if you have an audit program manager that's on board with that. But sometimes you have to build it ground up against a little bit of a headwind. But that's what I recommend, is start aggregating all this. Look for the opportunities and the gaps, right? A lot of business opportunity is about missed synergy or missed integration that we could have done. It's also, the simplest ones are the best practices. That's part of standard audit training, is not only look at the negatives, but point out if you find a best practice in a particular area, particular process, that's that data. Start collecting it. It's not enough just to put it in your audit report. Hey, the development team is doing something really great with their documentation. We should do it everywhere, and that gets filed. Missed opportunity, right? That's siloed information. So really work at promoting less silos, more integration of all that activity. Internal auditing is a great place to start.
All right, great. If you have any more questions for Kevin, now would be a good time to put them in the chat. Kevin referenced his previous webinar that he did for us, Advanced Audit Interviewing Techniques, a bit of a tongue twister. Those are available, the replays, on our website at intellect.com, as well as our other webinars.
I believe they're linked on my LinkedIn as well. So that'll be back to the Intellect recording.
And we did get a question about whether there'll be a follow-up email with the recording. Yes, we will share as soon as possible after the webinar a recording of this presentation, as well as the slide deck. So I think that is about it today with our questions. I appreciate everybody for joining us, and thank you again, Kevin, for coming back and sharing your expertise. Thank you, Alush, for co-hosting today. Everyone have a great day.
Any feedback from attendees, absolutely pass it on to my email or comment on LinkedIn. Be happy to connect as well. Always looking for improvement opportunities.
Great. Thanks, everybody.